Hi all, and welcome to my second video related to Austrian School of Economics. The second lecture has as topic value, one of the most important arguments related to the Austrian School in general of economics. The book that is related to the lecture is always the same, Principles of Economics from Safety in Amos. I strongly recommend you to read it. Let's start, as in the previous lecture, with some words of one of the most important, most famous economists of the Austrian school, also the founder, Karl Menger. He gave this definition about value. Value is nothing inherent in goods, no property of them, nor an independent thing existing by itself. It is a judgment economizing men make about the importance of the goods at their disposal for the maintenance of their lives and well-being. Hence, value does not exist outside the consciousness of men. And this is a very strong topic and definition. And in fact, the foundation of modern economics were laid by Karl Menger in 1871. While economics as a field of inquiry has been around since the time of Aristotle, Menger's explanation of the subjective nature of value and economic decision and his introduction of marginal analysis revolutionized the field and gave it a solid and theoretical and methodological foundation, allowing for a systematic analysis of how human beings economize and act. This chapter wrote by Safedin is summarizing the main points of the book Principles of Economics, written exactly by Karl Menger in 1971, the book that started the Austrian schools of economics. We can start with some definitions, as you can see here in the slide. So firstly, a good. What is a good? Is something useful that we can direct towards the satisfaction of human needs. It requires that a human need exists, that the properties of the good can cause satisfaction of that need, that humans have knowledge of this causal connection, and that commanding the good will be sufficient to direct it to the satisfaction of the human need. And it's a bit technical, but it's important to understand. Then let's go to utility. Utility is the capacity of a good to satisfy human needs. It is a prerequisite for an object being a good. And then it defines scarcity in this sense. So the goods can be divided into two categories, economic and non-economic. The distinction between the two is exactly scarcity. The demand for economic goods is always greater than the quantity supplied, whereas for non-economic goods, their supply exceeds the quantity demanded by humans. For example, air. We need air, but we have in big abundance, so it's not an economic good. The scarcity of economic goods force humans to economize in making choices between scarce alternatives. And this is very important. I read it again. The scarcity of economic goods force humans to economize, making choices between scarce alternatives. So we are making choices between alternatives. They are all scarces. In fact, economics is the study how humans attempt to find solution to the problem of disparity between what they have and what they want and the consequences of their choices. As scarcity is a permanent condition of existence, humans are constantly making choices between different courses of action, different goods and different needs to satisfy. Last but not least, let's define value. Value is our subjective assessment of the satisfaction we derive from goods and what allow us to make economic decision. So value is subjective. And the foundation of economic analysis and one of the groundbreaking insights from Menger works that is exactly that value is subjective. It exists only in the mind of the person making the valuation. It is not the inherent nature of goods that makes them valuable to us, but only our assessment of their suitability for meeting our needs. Value does not exist outside the consciousness of men. One clear example is oil. Until the 19th century, the presence of oil would decrease the value of land. Once humans realized that refined oil could be burned to power machines that satisfy the needs of transportation, electricity and heat generation, it went from being a costly nuisance to an enormously valuable asset. It has been always the same oil, nothing changed in its inherent properties. So, main takeaway is that value is subjective. Let's move now on the differentiation between ordinals versus cardinals. So let's start with the subjective value that cannot be measured and expressed objectively. Since valuation is subjective to the human making it, and since its valuation is constantly shifting based on the changes in our needs and in our understanding of goods' abilities to satisfy our needs, valuation different from one person to another, and individual valuation are constantly shifting depending on individual condition. There is no objective standard by which satisfaction of humans can be compared, as the individual themselves are the arbiters of value. There is no way of objectively measuring the satisfaction one person gets from a goods in terms of the satisfactions any other person gets from the same goods. Without a standard objective unit, measurement is not possible, and valuation cannot be expressed in objective numerical cardinal terms, making it impossible to measure economic value with mathematical precision. And in this we are back to the first lecture, that we cannot quantify economics. The only way we can express valuation is in ordinal terms, in which goods are compared to another and ordered in terms of the valuing individual preference, but not valued in explicit quantitative terms. In fact, human valuation for material goods, friendship and family and happiness can only be compared, but they cannot be added, subtracted or multiplied. It is therefore possible to compare goods in terms of value, as an individual can easily determine if they value good A more than good B and good B more than good C. But this valuation is purely subjective, expressed in terms of the utility experienced by the person making the valuation. So, main takeaway is that we can only compare in ordinal terms between goods, only in ordinal terms and not in cardinal terms. Now let's continue to the determinants of value, and let's analyze the three different schools and how they determine value. In fact, the fundamental difference between the Austrian school's economics and other schools is that Austrian view value as subjective, while other schools conceive value as something objective or objectively measurable. Some modern economics textbooks define value as a function of utility, which they measure in terms of an imaginary and undefined unit named util. In reality, there is no standard for what constitutes a util, and there is no way measuring anything in terms of unit or utils. Remember the first lecture about that. We cannot measure economy. We cannot quantify. Marxist, on the other hand, thinks that value is determined by the labor that goes into the production of a good, an absurd contention according to which things become more valuable if work is expended on producing them, regardless of anyone wanting to own them. If you were to spend equal time baking a normal cake or a cake of mud, the Marxist will argue that both cakes will be valued the same because we spend the same time in making it. What is the reality? In reality, this is one of the most important topics. Goods are only valued because of their ability to satisfy our needs, and this also put the people at the center. A buyer is not interested in how much time and effort went into making a product when he purchases it, but only in the service and utility the product provides him. The output will not become more valuable to others just because of the effort spent producing it. Its uselessness renders it worthless to anybody who cares to value it. How consumers determine the subjective value of object is up to them. The same individual, in fact, will value the same good at different valuation at different times and place, depending on many factors, most notably their existing stockpile of goods. So, main takeaway, goods are only valued because of their ability to satisfy our needs. Now, another very important slide is about marginalism. And this is also the Menger's other momentous of contribution to economics is the concept of marginalism. After establishing that the value of goods is not inherent to them but is rather subjective and depend on the ability to satisfy our needs, Menger applied this to the study of the value of different units of the same good, and, in the process, laid the foundation for modern economic analysis. Since the value of good is derived from their ability to provide us satisfaction, and since different satisfactions have an equal value to us, the value of different units of the same good will be also unequal, as it depends on the satisfaction that they meet. In fact, the same good will have a different value to the same person depending on how it meets his need at a given point of time. Individual, in fact, use the first unit of a good to meet the first important and pressing needs related to it. They will use the second unit to meet the second most pressing need. As the quantity of the good increases, the needs that are met are less valuable and less pressing. In other words, identical goods will have different values for individuals because the utility derived from them is not identical. The first unit is the most valuable, as the number of units consumed increased, each marginal unit is less valuable than the previous one. For example, for water, the first one is to drink some water, first unit, second unit, bigger unit maybe will be to have shower, a third unit will be to clean the dishes, fourth unit will be to clean the car, and the lower we go, the more unit we have, the less we value the last unit. In fact, Menger illustrated that the valuation we place on goods is not dependent on their total or overall utility, and that their utility is not inherent to these goods in the abstract, regardless of their quantities. Rather, the importance that we attach to goods is inextricably independent on the quantity of these goods, on their quantity in relation to the existing supply of the goods we have at our disposal. Humans make decisions not on the total abstract utility or of an object, but on the utility offered by distinct quantities of the goods, or the ability to satisfy our distinct needs. The law, and here we introduce the law of diminishing marginal utility, that is very important in economics, states that an individual's valuation and utility derived from a good will decline as the quantity of the good they hold increases. Since individuals use the first units of a good that they have acquired for the fulfillment of the most pressing needs it can address, it must therefore follow that the first unit of any goods increase and each marginal unit goes towards meeting a less pressing need. Each marginal unit will have a lower value of the individual. So, repeating the law of diminishing marginal utility states that an individual's valuation and utility derived from a good will decline as the quantity of the good they hold increases. Let's move now in the last page of the presentation, introducing the valuation by the least valuable use. Valuation, as an individuals deploy their inventory of a good to meet their pressing needs, their valuation of the marginal unit will reflect their valuation of the least important satisfaction this good assures. Thus, when making a purchasing decision, an individual valuation of a good will reflect his valuation of the least important satisfaction it provides. Let's have an example. A man deciding to pay for a meal will not pay based on how much he values food in the abstract or how much he values all the food he has eaten throughout his entire life. He will pay up to the value he attaches to the next meal itself. He's not valuing as if it was a difference between life and death, because it is not. The decision about the next mean, the next mean is valued according to the need of the next that the next meal satisfy. For the man, which being one meal will be significantly lower than the value of food keeping him alive in general, or the value of all previous meals that ensured his survival until today. Also, the value of water is not related to survival, but the value of the less pressing needs. And here we can introduce the water-diamond paradox. And with this example, I will finish the lecture. The law of diminishing marginal utility solves the water-diamond paradox, an explanation of which had evaded economists for centuries. The question is, how could economists explain that water, which was essential for human life, was usually very cheap, where diamonds, which are luxury goods that service no essential life purpose for humans, are very expensive? Market value does not pertain to some inherent property of the good or to the value that all of these stockpiles afford us. It is based. The answer is that the market value is based on the least important of the satisfaction of the good. Since drinking water is usually available in large quantities wherever humans are settled, therefore follows that the most pressuring needs are already met, and that the choices are being made over units meeting far less pressing needs. Diamonds, on other hand, being very rare and available in very small quantities, are purchased by people deploying them for some of the highest valued uses. In case a man is stranded in the desert without access to water, the choice will go to water because it will mean life instead of death to him. The paradox, in fact, illustrates the importance of the individual circumstances to an assessment of subjective value. And with this example of the explanation of the paradox of water-diamond, we finish here the second lecture, and I will give you next lecture will be the third, and it will be about one of the most another very important topics of economics, that will be time. Then thank you all, and see you in one of the next lectures. Bye.